Views and opinions expressed in this production are those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Shooters Nation or our sponsors. Information provided on this show is not a replacement for legal counsel or professional training. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows.
Welcome to the Shooters Nation podcast, the show created for you, the armed citizen. Join our hosts and subject matter experts as we talk about guns and gear, practical training and knowledge, Second Amendment issues, and the firearms culture. Be sure to join us after the show at shootersnation.com and become part of the Shooters Nation.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Shooters Nation podcast. I'm your host, David Yancey, and as always, I'm joined by my multi-talented, always beautiful, ever attractive, super awesome co-host, Mark Lancaster from Squared Away Customs. I don't know why you got that intro. Really, I should have.
I'm blushing.
Yeah, you are. I mean,
well done.
Yeah, we should make that a thing every time.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'm comfortable heaping that praise on you. And I could have saved some of that for Jordan Linscheid, but I absolutely didn't. And so we're also joined by our good friend Jordan.
The man, the myth, the legend.
The man, the myth, the legend. The bearded
and
wonder.
The opposite of all the previously mentioned superlatives.
Yeah. Kind of like a yearbook, like where you sign the yearbook and you say all the great things about the person, knowing that you'll never see them again, or you hope that you won't. So, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't. I mean, really, I guess I sent the wrong message. I didn't really mean like I hope I never see. Never mind, forget it. This is terrible.
I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, no. I'm glad to see you. It's been a while. So, how long has it been, Jordan? I mean, you've been on here with us before, but the last episode that you were with us, what did we talk about? I'm trying to remember.
Ooh, that's a good question.
I think it was guns.
Yeah. Was it just a Let's Talk About Guns episode?
I think it was a follow-up to the NRA annual meeting.
Oh,
we briefly touched on the subject of Tim Kennedy and some of the fallout from his statements.
We sure did. And that hasn't gotten any better from what I've heard. The last time I heard him talking about it, it was kind of the same old. So I think, I mean, I think that I don't really want to dig that dead horse up and beat on it anymore, but I think that he really kind of really hadn't done much to change the narrative, but I think everybody has given him a lot of slack. And probably the best thing I can say about that is it sounds like he didn't mean what he said. He just chose poorly what he was going to say or how he was going to say it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have no doubt that the guy's heart's in the right place. It's just that was a lot of stupidity. Wow, we're really dredging up the past. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's like tangent number 1, 18 seconds into episode.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Yeah. That's what happens when you invite me on, David. So should probably refrain from further remarks.
Speaking of Ted Kennedy and tangents, I really got into that Finding Hitler show.
Did you? I still haven't watched it.
I binged it hard.
Okay.
And yeah, it's I'll leave it at that until you guys can go watch it.
Well, I mean, he's got a new one coming out also. What is it? Hard to Kill or something like that?
Yeah, I watched the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay. It's not awesome. It's not horrible.
I mean, tell me if I'm right or wrong. It's kind of like Tim Kennedy takes the extreme edge on the micros dirty jobs, but this is jobs where you might get yourself killed.
Yeah, rather than dirty, it's dangerous, basically. And I kind of don't really understand the risk of some of the things that he's apparently doing on camera, air quotes there, whether he's really doing this or it's a stunt guy. It's kind of up in the air because I watched one of them recently when he was doing some bullfighting and it kind of didn't look like him that was being hit. And the camera angle just happened to not be pointing at his face when the guy got hit by the bull.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then he got locked in a cockpit of a little Piper airplane that they lit on fire.
I saw that on
why would
Facebook.
You do this? It doesn't make any sense. Just for entertainment value, you're going to potentially risk your life like that.
Right.
your job deserves an episode on this show. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And you would think that Uncle Sam would have something to say about the unnecessary risk, considering how much money they've invested in anybody in his position that has had the level of training that he has.
Or Discovery Channel insurance.
Yeah.
He actually discussed the insurance issue quite a bit with Joe Rogan when he was on his podcast the last time. They talked about the show and a lot of the stunts.
Yeah.
And difficulties with insurance and what was necessary to get people to look the other way.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah.
I can't remember everything that was said, but yeah, it's like Mark said, I can't believe, because it's not like he's just a private citizen still, you know?
Right.
So there's more than just the insurance angle to be considered. But
right. Well, you know, obviously it sounds like, you know, listening to him talk about his service record, he's had a good career being very effective at putting bad guys in the dirt. And so I hope he stays healthy, because, you know, we definitely need him doing that. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. I think that, it's funny that you bring that back up, because I heard him on something the other day and I listened to him and I thought, you know, I don't feel the same way about you that I did previously, because previously when I listened to him, all I could hear him saying was being critical of 19-year-olds being able to buy an AR-15. And that kind of agitated me. But this last time I listened to him speak, and I didn't feel the same agitation, but I guess I had a little bit of remorse still. It's like, Tim, I really like you. I wish you hadn't said that, because I haven't forgotten. But, you know, I don't know. That's just me being petty and holding on to a grudge, perhaps. I don't know. I don't wish the guy, you know, poorly. Like I said, I hope he stays healthy and continues to do bad things to bad people. But, the whole dangerous jobs or hard to kill or whatever we're calling it, that it's interesting. I did see the thing with the Piper aircraft, and I think he said that it got so hot that it melted the cockpit shut, and he had a hard time opening the cockpit to get out of it. So anyway, that might be a record for the number of times I've used the term cockpit on this show. So,
why stop now?
Yeah, why stop? We could just make that the word. Remember Pee Wee Herman, where they'd say the magic word and everybody would go crazy? It could be cockpit for this episode. Just saying. Oh, me. It's been a week. Mark, I think last week I said, hey, it was a better week than the week before. And this week's been done. This week's been right back in the toilet. So I am glad that it's almost over. And if this week were a bad guy, I would ask Tim Kennedy to go shoot it in the face for me. So
we've been, you know, we lost one of our part-time guys at Squared Away Customs, and it's really put us in kind of a bit of a backlog that we've really been working hard to work through. Last weekend in fact, the last 2 weekends I've done back-to-back days, like long days in the shop, plus, you know, working full-time during the week. And I've been noticing the stress levels getting higher. So 2 times this week, I have taken 30 minutes, grabbed 100 rounds, and ran to the range with dot torture.
Nice.
And man, it's amazing how much difference that can change your morale.
Therapeutic, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, would it take me 20 minutes to go through 100 rounds? And the range is only a quarter mile from here. And so I go down there, and it's middle of the day on a Monday, you know, nobody around.
Got the place to yourself.
Kind of do my thing, take my time.
Yeah.
Really focus on those dots, really focus on my trigger press, side alignment, so on and so forth, and get after it and work through dot torture. But man, twice this week I've done it, and I come back good. Being like, whew, it feels good.
Maybe I should do that tomorrow. I'm going to work from home at my home office tomorrow and Friday. So today, it's Wednesday as we're recording this, as a math savvy listener might have just deduced. But I've got a range about 10 minutes from the house. I may go do that. If I can't do that during the rest of the week when I'm at the office, because I can't drive a quarter mile and not be at an airport. You know, we've got airports surrounding us, and they frown heavily upon you going onto airport property and shooting at things. So
I hear that.
Yeah, I would make new friends, federal friends. They probably wouldn't be very friendly, but yeah, that would just make my week even better. Like, how can I make this week worse? That would be it. So no, I don't know. I don't want to complain. I've got a good job and you know, pays the bills, and Tim Kennedy's not trying to shoot me in the face while I'm doing it. So everything's coming up Millhouse. Well, last week we had William Aprill on from Aprill Risk Consulting, and that was a very interesting conversation. As a matter of fact, we've had several people comment on social media, on Instagram and on Facebook, send private messages. The one email that I got was from a guy named Eric, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce Eric's last name. So Eric, if you're listening, my apologies. I will just do you an honor of not trying. But he said that was a very practical and very frightening conversation. And he added some more context to what he meant by that. And I got it. When he said frightening, when I read it, I was like, yeah, I get it, man. You know, you're thinking about all the bad stuff that goes on around you. And one of William's exhortations to us was to pay attention to the news and use that as brain fuel to walk through scenarios in your head and plan ahead of a bad thing actually ever happening in your life, which we hope that it doesn't. So, Mark, when I contacted you earlier about this show, I said, well, it's been kind of a crummy week. I haven't had a whole heck of a lot of time to plan something, and we got some really interesting SMEs coming up, which I'm excited about, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But I thought for this episode, it might be good to just simply talk about situational awareness. And I asked Jordan to join us, and he was gracious enough to do that. So the SMEs this time are us, which will be fun. Yeah. Maybe. I think it'll be fun. So, So I guess getting into the core conversation is diving into it, and I'll preface this with, I don't know how long this episode's going to go. We've got a couple questions jotted down to work through together, but it might be an hour. It might be a little bit more than that. So we'll just have to see. But if you guys will humor me just for a second, I just wanted to kind of intro this one, and this is what I wrote down. And these are actually my thoughts as I was brainstorming, and I guess it's a good lead in. I said that over the past 24 episodes, the topic of situational awareness has come up often, yet we never really dove very deep into any of that. And Mark, before the show, we were chatting, and you were recanting how many people had talked about it. We had Jason Demo, Mike Cicino. Mm-hmm. We had William, our friend, the Navy SEAL that came on and talked to us about church security and school security. Randy Harris, Ian Strembeck. Golly, I mean, really everybody that we've had on here, it seems like at some point in the conversation we've talked about it. Either we've talked about it overtly as situational awareness, or we've talked about it subtly with references to Colonel Jeff Cooper's color codes. And then William last week, I think the subtitle to that whole episode could have been situational awareness. I'll get that out sooner or later. Yeah. So for our audience, situational awareness may be a topic that you're already well versed in, but honestly, I think if there's just one person listening to this who can benefit from what we're about to discuss, then the episode's it'll have been worth it. And those that maybe think that they have it all figured out already, and I'll be honest, that might be us, that might be me. I'm not sure. I haven't really decided if I think that I have situational awareness figured out or not, because I try to be humble about that. But is saying that you're humble about something humble, or is that ostentatious? I don't know. Jordan, what do you want to weigh in on that?
I think it's called a humble brag, David.
A humble brag? Oh my God.
I think that's what you're doing.
Okay. Well, so I'll humble brag about that. That's wonderful. But yeah, if you think that you've already got it figured out, then maybe there's something new that you'll learn in this conversation as well. And that would make it worth it too. But as I was looking to just get some sort of context around situational awareness and how we could conceptualize that real quickly for the audience, I found two articles on the internets, and one of them was from the artofmanliness.com, which is just a fantastic blog about a lot of really cool manly stuff, as you might imagine. And then there was another website, it was besurvival.com, and I don't know anything about that one. I just, it happened to have some some actually pretty salient points about situational awareness, and I bookmarked it. Said, "Yep, okay, we'll kind of go back to that and use it for speaking points." But I'll drop these in the show notes. I'm not endorsing either one of them, even though I would say that if I was going to endorse one of the two, it would probably be Art of Manliness, just because I've read other things there, and I know that those guys are pretty solid. I don't know anything about the other one, but anyway. So how about this? How about if we just kind of start off this way, guys? I'll ask you questions, and then I'll weigh in maybe at the end of that. But let's just define what situational awareness is. What does that mean to you? And Jordan, since you're kind of our special guest, joining us again from the dark regions of the universe, where have you been? You've been in Chicago, which really qualifies as a dark region of the universe.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you got to use some situational awareness up there, didn't you?
I certainly did. I actually have a pretty good example when you let me know what the topic was tonight. I thought, oh, perfect. Because I was definitely in condition yellow most of the time. Or all of the time, and sometimes orange. But not to jump ahead. As far as defining situational awareness, I guess I'll give a subjective definition, because to me it means, it's somewhat of a self-explanatory term, but it means being purposefully aware of what is going on around you, what's happening in your surroundings, not just what you're doing, but what other people are doing. And I think I would equate it to defensive driving. That's the best example I can think of that everyone should be somewhat familiar with, is that when you're on the road, you're not just concerned about what you as a driver are doing, but you need to be paying attention if you want to avoid collisions. You want to be aware of what the vehicles in front of you are doing, what the vehicles behind you are doing, what's on the street. If there's little kids playing on the sidewalk, you never know when a ball or frisbee or something's going to get tossed out into the street and they're going to chase after it. So, like I said, situational awareness is being purposefully aware of your surroundings at all times.
I don't think that's a shabby definition at all, really. I mean, it's very relatable, and I would say that it kind of tones down the tactical, that a lot of guys use whenever they talk about situational awareness. Mark, what do you think? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I would 100% agree with what Jordan says there. I mean, I think that he pretty much, I mean, that's very similar to something I would say, I think.
Yeah. Well, so the definition that I found in one of these two blogs, and I think I'm going to tip the hat to besurvival.com on this one, but they said that situational awareness is the ability to identify, process, and comprehend information about how to survive in an emergency situation. And more simply, it's knowing what is going on around you. It's dynamic, it's hard to maintain, and it's easy to lose. And really, what they're talking about there is that it's the ability and the skill that's so dynamic and hard to maintain and easy to lose. It's a perishable skill, like shooting. I think that once you master the fundamentals of being able to shoot accurately or proficiently at speed with accuracy, you may never completely lose that ability. You'll always have kind of a low water mark, if you will, of proficiency. But if you want to stay at the top of your game, it's something you have to exercise, and you have to go out and do with some diligence and keep sharp. So for me, I think it's the ability to take in a scene, take in your surroundings, and maybe form that baseline of what's normal and what's not. And it could be everything from at work, are people, how's the anxiety or stress level for people at the office? Situationally aware. If I walk into the office after having been out for a week and everybody's cutting up and having a good time and whatever, then I can reasonably assume that things are normal and maybe even going well. Projects are on time, et cetera, et cetera. But if I walk in and everybody's hushed and maybe somebody makes a comment and somebody snaps at them, which is kind of uncharacteristic, then I might think, oh, well, hey, there's something going on here, right? So situational awareness is not just tactical. It's kind of what we do and how our brains process the visual and audible information that's coming into us, right? So that's maybe a little bit more in depth than I needed to go so quickly, but that's kind of what I was thinking when I was starting to think about situational awareness holistically and not just the super cool tactical space shuttle door gunner stuff.
Head on a swivel.
Yeah, head on a swivel, right? Yeah, I mean, Mark, you've talked about that before, even where you've noticed that you go to the coffee shop and you said that you.
The girl at Starbucks, man, I'll never forget that.
Yeah, the girl at Starbucks, walking across the parking lot with her head in her phone.
Yeah.
Her focus is right there in that little 4-inch square screen in her hand.
Yeah.
And she nearly walked into a car or tripped into a guardrail or something.
It was almost like one of those they had it on the patio at this Starbucks. It's almost like a concert barricade that goes around the stage. So don't climb up. And she's just walking along and it just, takes her right in the top of the thighs and folded her right over it.
Oh my goodness.
Just completely blind to it. Just no idea what's going on. Not to mention she just crossed a parking lot. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you're not paying attention to the cars. You're not paying attention to where you're walking. Your phone is your only, it was pretty comical.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so maybe it's a good point to talk about the color codes. And again, this might be something that our more seasoned, savvy audience members are already aware of, but I think it would be helpful just to go through them again, just to set what we're talking about for this particular episode. And so the color codes, Cooper's color codes, are the creation of the late, great Colonel Jeff Cooper, military. He was a U.S. Marine. He was also he's kind of acknowledged as being the creator of the quote modern technique of handgun shooting, and by that it's the fighting pistol style. It's all function with form that follows it, and so he founded originally the American Pistol Institute, and then went on to found what everybody today knows as Gunsight. And so if you're familiar with that, or if you've been a student of that, you probably know about Colonel Cooper. If not, that's where his claim to fame is really. But with the color code, he was talking about awareness and what Wikipedia says, the font of all knowledge. What Wikipedia says is that the color code, as originally introduced by Jeff Cooper, had nothing to do with tactical situations. That's interesting. Or alertness levels, but rather with one's state of mind. And as taught by Cooper, it relates to the degree of peril that you are willing to do something about, and which allows you to move from one level of mindset to another to enable you to properly handle a given situation. And Cooper, it goes on to say that Cooper did not claim to have invented anything in particular with the color code, but he was apparently the first to use it as an indication of mental state. Listeners might correlate this also with post 9/11, the terror threat conditions, right? We all heard about those, especially in the first few years after 9/11. Well, condition yellow or condition red if there was a high level of threat, etc. So what Cooper said was he has codes white, yellow, orange, and red. And then the U.S. Marine Corps actually added condition black as another follow-in to that. But so if you're in condition white, you're unaware and unprepared. And that if you were attacked in condition white, the only thing that might save you is the inadequacy, golly, can I get this word out? The inadequacy or ineptitude of your attacker. And I would add sheer luck. And that when confronted by something nasty, your reaction will probably be, oh my God, this can't be happening to me. Which was exactly what William Aprill was talking about last week, where most people that's followed by or prefaced by the word "but." Here I was walking across the parking lot with my phone in my hand, but I didn't see that barricade and I tripped over it. So then code yellow is you're at a relaxed alert status, that you're not aware of any specific threat. Your mindset is, quote, today could be the day that I might have to defend myself. And you're simply aware that the world is potentially unfriendly place, and that you're prepared to do whatever's necessary to defend yourself. And you're using your eyes and your ears, and you're just being cognizant of what's going on around you. And so, Jordan, you said that a minute ago. In Chicago, while you were there, you kind of stayed in that condition yellow, right? You're just watching, what people are doing around you and what's going on. Condition orange, it's a specific alert. Something's not quite right. It has your attention, but you've not really determined that it's a threat yet. And then in red, condition red is fight. That's when the actual event is occurring, that your mental trigger that you established back in condition orange. So that was kind of goes back to what William Aprill was saying. He said he has certain thresholds that he will not allow himself to be forced to cross without taking action. And so if you've kind of set that mental trigger as being, this is a threshold that I will take action if this occurs. Colonel Cooper was talking about that in red. It's the fight. Your mental trigger has been tripped. If X happens, I will do Y. And so in this particular case, if X happens, I will shoot that attacker, or I will, bring the fight to that attacker. And the Marine Corps added condition black, as I said a minute ago, and that was just simply, I think Masad Ayub had said that condition black in Cooper's youth probably meant that combat was in progress. But I've also seen condition black as being referred to as a person who is 100% completely overwhelmed by whatever's going on, and they just mentally shut down. And William talked about that last week. He talked about the people that when the bad thing happens to them, they freeze. And I think Mark, didn't he say that like that might be temporary or it might be permanent, that a person might temporarily freeze and be so overwhelmed that they can't decide what they're going to do. And of course that could lead to permanent, peril, because if you don't react, you might be dead. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So anyway, those are the color codes. And again, if you were familiar with those, my apologies for walking you through them, but hopefully it just sets the parameters for what we're going to talk about here for the rest of the episode. Golly, I feel like I'm talking an awful lot here, but I guess that's kind of what I do. But the Art of Manliness blog had an article on this topic, guys, and what they referenced, I thought this was pretty cool. They referenced a scene at the beginning of the movie, the Bourne identity. And I think that's something that maybe a lot of folks will be able to relate to, even if everything that I just talked about makes no sense to them. And in the Bourne identity, there's a scene where Jason Bourne, the film's protagonist, is sitting in a diner trying to figure out who he is, right? And while he's sitting there, Bourne notices that he notices everything. He notices things that other people don't. He makes observations about his surroundings, about the people that are within them. He makes detailed assessments about the environment in a way that a certain guy carries himself and how he's standing and how he shifts his weight, and notices that he says, well, that particular guy probably knows how to handle himself and that sort of thing. And he says, I don't know how I know this stuff, but what he's talking about right there is situational awareness. It's what people in the tactical world like to call, watching your six or keeping your back to the wall. In a lot less tactical terms, just practically, Mark, you said a minute ago, keeping your head on a swivel, watching what's going on around you, not being absorbed in your cell phone. So all of that being said, how do you guys change your situational awareness depending on where you're at, or who you're with, or what you're doing? Mark, what about you? Does it depend on who you're with and what you're doing and where you're at?
Totally who I'm with. I mean, it totally matters if I'm out with the guys versus out with the wife and kids. That's a very, very, very different type of alert that I would be on. But also depends on where I am.
Yeah.
I'm in rural New Hampshire, so I'm not nearly as a heightened state when I'm in my home area,
right,
than if I am, per se, at the NRA show in Dallas, right? So depending on where I am, and then when I'm away, because I'm rural, I'm probably at a more heightened state than most people, because I'm not used to the hustle and bustle of a city like Dallas. So, and I just have trust problems in general. So when I'm in a place, I'm always, I don't want to say I'm always, but like when I walk into even when I walk into a restaurant here, I always look at like the faces that I can see, and kind of get an idea like, that these people all look okay, right? Because so many times it just seems like it's mental issues when these things are happening, when these bad things are happening, and I gotta think that they're signs before they just snap.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I feel like I read people pretty well, and I mean, that's kind of like one of my things that I do is I'll sit down and I don't like my back facing the door. I've never have, even when I was a kid. I always like to see the door. I like to see what's coming at me. I just kind of scan the room and get an idea when we first sit down, we get settled, and it's lots of different situations to break down, but that's an example of one.
Yeah. Well,
restaurant.
Let me ask, I mean, how does it differ when you're out with your wife and son? I don't want to assume, but maybe more vigilant?
More, because I know that I'm the one that is responsible for their safety as well. But when if I was to be with buddies at like the NRA show, and there's 6 of us and we're walking to a barbecue joint, I know that there's 6 guys and 6 guns that know that they're doing. Right. It's a different state. You know what I mean? A little bit more
comfort, strength in numbers. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that would absolutely be. But at the same time, normally if I'm with 6 guys, I am on a trip. You know, if I'm with buddies, I am on a trip. It's not often that I'm hanging out with a bunch of buddies in my hometown.
Yeah.
But
So I have another question, and this might be prying a little bit, but if you kind of go back, hop in the Wayback Machine mentally, and you think about back when you and your wife were just dating, getting to know each other, did she pick up on your awareness of what was going on around you? Did you have to talk about that? I'm thinking about folks in the audience that maybe they're not quite sure how to broach that subject, and maybe they feel a little weird, noticing these things, and they have to discuss it with their significant other or their family or their friends or what have you. Just wondering how did that work out for you?
I think it's a delicate situation to talk about because you don't want to come off as the paranoid guy, right? So I just, when the topic comes up, and yes, it was absolutely, I think Kristen absolutely noticed. And she absolutely noticed like me always putting her in a seat with her back to the door. So when that conversation came up, brought up by her, I just coolly and calmly talked about the way I feel about it, the way that, and she knew I carried already. So, just presenting my reasoning without trying to sound paranoid is important. But sounding paranoid, I don't think does anybody any favors. It's not really helping you. I mean, you get that a lot, everybody's like, oh, well, you're paranoid. It's like, well, no, there's a difference between paranoid and prepared.
That's right.
And, I think there's ways that you can talk about what you're trying to achieve without sounding paranoid.
Yeah. I forget exactly what William said last week on the episode, but maybe this is close to it. I truly can't recall, and I'd have to go back and listen to it again to get the exact quote, but we talked about paranoia. And my take on paranoia is that calling somebody paranoid is a luxury that people have when they're just not aware of the bad things going on in the world. And
sure.
Once a person starts to see it themselves and wills themselves to see it, you kind of quickly lose the innocence of being able to call people paranoid. Then you start to see the things that are going on that most of us willfully tune out, even if that's kind of a subconscious thing. It's the bad stuff on the news that happens to somebody else. That never happens to me. The school shootings, those happen somewhere else in another town. They didn't happen to me or my kids. The muggings at the mall, that happens to somebody else, right?
I've said it time and time again, and I think I've probably even mentioned it on the show before, but it's like, every single victim or relative of a victim at one point in time in any one of these mass shootings, every single one of them has probably thought to themselves, this is not going to happen to me.
Right.
Every single one, I would think at some point in time probably said that this isn't going to happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
I mean, you see it on the news all the time. He was such a nice guy. We never would have thought. She was such a nice lady. We would never would have imagined that she would do that heinous thing. And It's just that the bad stuff in the world tends to want to intrude on our nice, neat, perfect lives, and we willfully push it out. And that's why so many people, you see them on the news, well, I never would have thought that this would have happened to me, but it did. And, thankfully something must have gone well, or they wouldn't have been on the news. They wouldn't have survived that to be on the news to begin with. So, Jordan, what about you, man? So you did spend time in Chicago, and I'm gathering that, just from getting to know you over the past, 6, 8, 12 months or so, however long it's been now, I feel like we've got a friendiversary coming up. But anyway, yeah. So, I mean, you travel a lot for work, so I think that probably takes you in and out of a variety of different environments. But how was it being in Chicago? It's notoriously a very bustling, busy city, but it also has some bad baggage that goes along with it. If you look at the crime statistics and stuff, how was that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure about this weekend, but the weekend before, I actually sent an article to my fiance, whose family is from the South Side, one of the southern suburbs of Chicago. And Chicago Tribune had published an article saying in less than 7 hours, 41 shot, 5 fatally as violence ripped Chicago. And the actual victim count and fatalities were higher than that, but that was in a 7-hour period over one weekend. And so Chicago is a zone that, at least for me, requires specifically heightened awareness. I never choose to go there unless I'm visiting my fiance, her family. It's not, it's hard enough for me going to the state of Illinois, which I have other relatives there. But I'm accustomed. My travel primarily has taken me to the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, all of which are very friendly to carry. And the interesting thing about Chicago is that the zone that I most frequently travel to, that is statistically the most dangerous, is also the one that precludes me from legally carrying a weapon to defend myself.
That's so great.
So fortunately, my friend Gordon Linscheid, he may or may not carry.
Yeah.
Of course, I would never do such a thing.
Right. Yeah. Jordan Linscheid wouldn't, but Gordon.
No, not Jordan Linscheid.
That Gordon Linscheid.
Gordon Linscheid.
Yeah.
He's quite a character. You never know what he's going to get up to. But I actually have a specific tale from this weekend. So I traveled out to visit a friend who was in town, or was in Chicago for work. He and my fiance and I met up. Fiance and I took the train from her parents' home up into downtown Chicago. And that was an interesting experience in itself, because you go to the train stop, get on, well, you don't have a choice of where you're sitting all the time. The seats in the back against the wall, if you will, have already been taken almost always. And so you just pick a spot where you're kind of separated from people as much as you can be. And it was very interesting. I was dead tired. I hadn't slept at all the night before. Made a 4-hour trek out to her parents' place, and then we immediately got on the train at, I think, 5:15 or so. And even me being dead tired, I made it a point, while my fiance was trying to catch a few Z's, I stayed awake and alert, just listening to the conversation, the people that were talking with each other. And it was all pretty normal. There, nothing heated, which, not that I would expect that necessarily. It's early Sunday morning, pretty routine. But it's just something that, she's from that area. It's just a normal part of life, riding the train to work. Her dad takes that every day. And I was very uncomfortable because it was a new environment for me. Yeah. And so I was, just very specifically aware of what was going on around me. And once we got into the city and had breakfast and started going to some of the museums and different tours, we spent most of the day walking. We ended up taking an Uber at one point, which was a great relief to me. But as we were walking through the city, there's something, like you said, it's a bustling city. There's all kinds of people, even on a Sunday, or perhaps especially on a Sunday, there's people all over the streets. And I noticed it wasn't even a conscious decision in my mind, but I became aware that I had positioned myself behind my friend and my fiance. I'll just call them Scott and Ashley, as we were walking through the city. And they were walking in front, side by side, talking with each other. And I took a position behind them as somewhat of a, protective role. And what's nice is, as you're walking down a street with glass windows in the storefronts, is it's very easy to maintain situational awareness, see what's going on around you, across the street, behind you, without being obvious about it. Because you can look at a window and it looks like you're just staring at what's inside, but you can easily see the reflection of the people behind you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there were several points, one in particular, where there was an individual that was following very closely behind me, and we'd been walking for, block 2, made a turn, and I noticed this individual wasn't speeding up to get around us, wasn't slowing down, never changed direction. It's just going the exact same spot we were. And so I was making sure, that my wallet and everything's secure, that I know what's going on. And at some point, we were coming up, there was a pillar of some sort. And I let Scott and Ashley keep walking straight, and I just diverted to the right and kind of circled around. And this individual ended up going in a different direction entirely as soon as I did that. Like way, I changed my direction so abruptly that for him to follow me would have been extremely obvious.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of not even a wake up call, because I was aware of it. I was alert and kind of in, condition orange, where I had taken in the information. And I think that's a big part of situational awareness, realizing that the information is there. It's your responsibility to identify and,
sure,
to identify it, or to take it in, to observe it and say, okay, this could be completely innocuous, or this individual could have malicious intent.
So let me ask you a question though. So the guy that diverted off to the other, to a different direction, did it appear that he did that because you had altered your path, or did he do that because he was just going there anyway?
So to the best of my recollection, we're still walking down. We weren't at an intersection. We were just on the side of a street. And so when I diverted, I basically walked right next to the street, like I was going to take a crosswalk in a different direction entirely. And he, instead of following me to the right or keeping on straight ahead with Scott and Ashley, he went to the left down an alley or another row of shop fronts. But it was just very suspicious to me that he'd been following exactly the same path we had for roughly 3 blocks,
sure,
and maintaining the exact same pace and a consistent distance.
William made this comment last week. I'm sorry. He was talking about there was a fatal shooting at an ATM in Miami, Florida, and he made the observation that had the gentleman that was fatally shot, the victim, had he taken in the information that he gathered with his own situational awareness and had decided, rather than continue with his ATM transaction, just canceled it and then walked over to his car and got in and left before the assailant had come up to him, that he would have lived. The story would have been completely different. It would have never made the news, right? At worst, the person that was coming up behind him, maybe he wasn't an attacker. Maybe he didn't have any ill will in mind. He would have just looked at this guy that suddenly bolted and got in his car and thought, that was weird, right? But in your particular case, that guy may have said, that was weird. That dude just circled around the pillar and now he's right there by me. Weirdo. And then maybe he altered his course because he thought you were up to something, right? So
that absolutely could be the case.
Very benign.
Yeah, instinct is not to be dismissed,
right?
In a lot of cases,
right?
And, I mean, that was just it. The guy at the ATM just didn't act on his instincts.
Didn't act.
You could tell he knew something was up.
Yeah.
And he chose to just sit there and just keep doing what he was doing.
Just
but he
ignored
knew
it.
Something was wrong.
Yeah, that's crazy. So guys, I can't believe that we're already kind of like at the, we're really at the midpoint, and I probably talked too much leading up to this, trying to set the stage, and maybe wasn't as necessary, but let's do this. Let's take a break. But Jordan, I want to come back, and I've got two thoughts that occurred to me as you were describing the ride in on the train with your fiance and friends. And I want to come back and talk about that. In particular, here's what you can think about at break. The fact that your fiance's baseline was for her normal baseline was, I can take a nap on this train, while yours was up there a little bit more agitated, a little bit more worried, and also just the fact that you being in an environment that was different for you caused you to be searching for the baseline, right? As you were looking for the way people were acting on the train, and you were listening to conversations, and even you carry that with you out onto the street and watching this in the store window. So I want to talk about that when we get back, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit more. I'm interested in hearing what you think about that, and then we'll get into some other questions. But if anything, folks, this is a brain fuel episode. So hope that you're getting something useful out of it. And we'll be back with you guys here in just a few minutes. So stick around.
Hey folks, David here. I want you to think about the handgun you carry for your own protection, and I really want you to think about the holster you carry it in. Do you have trouble concealing your handgun? Does it feel like no matter what you do or how you dress, it's painfully obvious to everyone that you're carrying concealed? Well, I want to take a moment to introduce you to Squared Away Customs. Squared Away Customs is a manufacturer of custom, high-quality holsters for both concealed carry and duty carry. They provide a catalog of holster designs to choose from, and they are glad to take on custom work to design something to meet your specific needs. Mark and his team take pride in providing an excellent product at a reasonable cost. They work hard to keep delivery times short, and their number one goal is to ensure that their customers are satisfied. Squared Away Customs also offers a heroes discount to military, police, emergency medical workers, and educators. And for listeners of the Shooters Nation podcast, Mark offers a reduced pricing if you use coupon code ShootersNation. Again, that's ShootersNation as the coupon code. So, before you strap that cheap floppy store-bought holster on again, head over to squaredawaycustoms.com and treat yourself and your carry gun to something more worthy of the challenge.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shooters Nation podcast. Mark and I are here with Jordan Linscheid, and we're talking about situational awareness. And so, Jordan, before we took a break, I said I wanted to talk about two things that you'd mentioned in your story about your trip to Chicago as relates to situational awareness. And the first thing was the fact that your fiance's baseline for where she would tolerate the environment and not see anything out of the ordinary as a resident of Chicago and a frequent traveler on the trains, her baseline was such that she didn't feel uncomfortable taking a brief nap on the train, right? But yours was a bit different. And so just thinking through that, how first of all, speak to how your baseline was different as you try to acclimate to the environment. And then maybe also speak to how quickly, did your baseline adjust after you'd been there for a little while?
Sure. So I will say this. I don't want to make it sound as though my fiance is completely unaware or, just has a sense of security when she shouldn't, because I think the large part of the reason she felt so comfortable is the fact that I was riding next to her and, she felt like I was in that protective role. Right. She's naturally a fairly paranoid individual, self-proclaimed. And actually, I'd planned to drive in the night before to Chicago, and she'd asked me not to because of all the violence. We were planning to take a Saturday night train downtown.
That's so crazy. I'm sorry. That's just so crazy. No, the poor people that live there. Yeah. All right. Anyway. Yeah.
So she'd said that she and her dad were going over the news and had seen that there were even shootings on the north side, which is usually pretty free, of violence, but that the gang activity was moving further north. And so she asked me not to come into town until Sunday morning. So, so she, her normal, she's not, she does have some anxiety and, just, which is not necessarily an unhealthy thing, especially in that environment. She and I grew up in very different regions. I grew up in the Midwest where, people leave their houses unlocked, keys in the vehicles all the time, not uncommon. I mean, even going away on vacation. And she's from an area where, like, anytime I go visit her family, they don't want anything visible in the vehicles. If I've got a backpack or something, it's got to be tucked under a seat. They don't want anything visible, even in the middle of a mall parking lot. We go to watch a movie. Nope, everything's got to be packed away. So I would say that she and her family are very conscientious about, the way they protect the extent they're willing to go to mitigate risk is far beyond what I would ever assume. My mindset is more like, well, someone wants, like, there's only so much I can do. If someone wants to get into my car, they're getting in, right? But I've never thought like, oh, well, leaving a bag on the front seat could be an enticement to have my windows blown out. So, but more specifically to your question about our differing baselines, for me, it was a totally new environment. And not only was it a new environment, but it's one that I felt, statistically at least, posed a higher potential for threat or risk, if you want to look at it that way. And so that's why I was, I had a heightened sense of awareness, because it wasn't like riding through South Dakota, right? And a lot of that comes down to, you could call it stereotyping or profiling, not just of individuals, but of a culture and a region, where, I'm pretty certain that a very, very low percentage of the population are carrying to defend themselves. If there is anyone carrying a weapon, more than likely it's with ill intent, or, not necessarily like they're looking for someone to knock off. But it's a very different environment than most of the states that I've grown up in and spent my time working in. So that's why I was on a heightened alert level during the entirety of the trip. And like you pointed out, it's just listening to the conversations that were going on around me, trying to figure out what's the general mood. And fortunately, everyone was, good mood. There's just gossip about a daughter and niece of two women that were on the train, and, silly stuff like that. It was a little bit interesting, but, you just kind of pop in and out, try and listen to different, just listen to the tone, see who's the other thing. They're all double deckers. So there's a row of seats above you, and very few people sit up there. But the ones that do, it's just kind of interesting because you can't see very much of them. You see their leg, and, maybe their side. And it's kind of comforting to see how many people are wearing their headphones and just dialed in to their own little world, because that means, or at least, to me, that seems an indicator that they're not interested they don't necessarily pose a specific threat to anyone else, or not at that time. So that's kind of a weird thing. It's almost like I'm saying, I'm glad that other people weren't situationally aware.
Right.
But there were a lot of clear indicators that no one else on the train had any care as to what other people were doing.
Well, what you just described, one of these articles I was reading before we started to record tonight was they talked about establishing a baseline wherever you go. And specifically, the article said this: every environment and person has a baseline. A baseline is what's quote unquote normal in a given situation, and it will differ from person to person and environment to environment. For example, the baseline of a small coffee shop will usually entail people reading a book or working on their computer or speaking in hushed tones with their friends. The bass line at a rock concert would be loud music and people looking at the stage while either jumping up and down to the music or swaying their bodies to the beat. So what you were describing is that the bass line on that train, people are in their own little cocoons and their own little worlds. They get their headphones in. They're probably looking at something on their phone. They might be reading a book or the magazine or the newspaper or what have you. And so that's the baseline. You know, the natives, the people that do this all the time, their baseline was to be detached from what was going on around them. I think that you probably would have noticed had I stepped onto the train and I didn't do that and I were looking around rather nervously and maybe I had a bag with me, a backpack, if you will, or something. And then I happened to leave that backpack and start working my way away from it towards the front of the train, towards an exit, leaving my backpack behind. You would have noticed that. That would have deviated from the baseline, you know? So, and it could have been something completely innocuous. It could have just been, I'm an idiot and I was preoccupied and I left my bag and I was going to miss that at the next exit, you know? But it could have also been something far worse. So, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, what you described is actually a perfect assessment of the baseline for that environment. Mark, let me ask you something though. Sorry, man, I'm throwing this one at you, and it's actually got a, you know, what society might look at as being a bad word, but Jordan said it first, so I'll blame Jordan. How does profiling fit into your toolkit? And again, it has bad connotations, right? We all hear about profiling that's bad. You shouldn't profile people, but I tend to believe that it's a legitimate tool and it's something that we all naturally do at some level or another, even if we don't call it that. So what about you?
Absolutely. I think we all do it, whether you want to admit it or not. You're profiling, or judging, is I guess is another word that you could maybe
that's a great word.
Fit into the same wheelhouse. And we all do it. I'm absolutely going to tell you that I absolutely profile people as they're walking to an establishment that I'm in. I'm absolutely looking at them, trying to figure them out. I'm trying to figure out what their intentions are, like what they're doing, what they're thinking, how they're doing, how they're feeling. You know what I mean? Reasons that makes them suspect to anything or not. I mean, that's all part of it.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that if you're not, then you're not digging deep enough into what is going on around you. If you don't kind of try and get a feeling for the intentions of the people that are surrounding you.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it? We had William, our Navy SEAL friend that came on and talked about church security. I believe it was him that said this. I'll tread in dangerous territory here, but I'm going to do it in a way that maybe is a little bit safer than the converse. But he was talking about the tragic church shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, a predominantly black church. And then you had a young white male dressed unseasonably. He was wearing a heavy jacket in warm weather. And he was very nervous and looking around and, you know, had they known, he was concealing weapons in under this coat and such, but he was an anomaly in that congregation. He was not what they normally would have expected. And, you know, to their credit, man, those people, you know, the story is they embraced him. They tried to welcome him. They asked him how they could help him, if there was something that they could help take care of, you know, et cetera. And unfortunately, tragically, we know how that played out. Right. But the warning sign was somebody who traditionally wouldn't have been there and very untraditionally was dressed out of season and was very nervous and demonstrating all these behaviors. And so profiling, right? It's just looking around and using common sense to say this shouldn't be here, or this is out of place, or this behavior is uncommon. And it might be innocuous, you know. Yeah, I had a former boss that said that when he came to this country to go to school, he first, I think, landed in Chicago, or maybe it was New York, and he hit there in the dead of winter. And he came from a warmer climate. And he shows up in shorts. He steps off the plane, gets out of the airport, walks out to the concourse, steps out on the sidewalk, and was like, "Holy crap, it's cold out here." He walked back inside, bought a ticket, flew to Dallas, Texas, and he went to school there instead, right? So, I mean, you know, that poor guy would have looked very strange to the people around him, but completely innocuous. So not every time you encounter something like that would it be somebody's up to no good, but it behooves us to notice these things and at least just be cognizant of, hey, there's something that's sticking out of place. I
had just a thought about profiling. This is just a short aside. I think I may have talked about it on the first episode that you guys had me on, but part of the reason I carry every day, the biggest catalyst was just very nearly avoiding being present at a shooting in a mall. And
wow,
it wasn't a mass shooting, but it was targeted specific individual. Very easily could have been, because he knew that there was nothing after that for him. But the murderer was actually a security guard at the mall. He was actually a mall security guard. Got fired, went home, got his Glock, came back, shot the person who had reported him for sexual harassment in the back and back of the head several times, and walked out and left. And so when we talk about profiling, something that also taught me was to never make an assumption, to never have a presumption of safety simply because someone's wearing a uniform or appears to be a good guy necessarily. You can't make that assumption on your own.
Yeah.
If there's an unknown individual, anyone in the world could dress up in a generic security guard uniform, caterer's outfit, whatever. Profiling is very useful, but you also have to maintain awareness and a healthy dose of suspicion about everyone around you.
Trust your gut. Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed as I was following up with some of William Aprill's Instagram stuff after last week, was he has several news stories on there that are very tragically, very unfortunately, stories about people who were hurt by members of their own family. And you would think, okay, these are the people that you should be safest with and most comfortable around and such. But then there was something that the cues that the victims just missed. And that's terrible. I think that there are some things that are glaringly obvious. Was it our friend Mike Cicino, Mark, that posted the video of the convenience store? It looked like it was in Australia, where the woman walks in with an axe in her hand, a long-handled axe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so she walks in with an axe, and it's all on surveillance video. And, the customers are standing there talking to her, and she's got an axe, like Paul Bunyan axe in her hand.
Yeah, they turn around, they look back and see that she has an axe.
Yeah.
And then they just turn back forward and continue waiting in line.
I think the one guy had his hands in his pockets still. Even It was crazy.
Some chick comes up behind me with an axe. Like, you bet I'm getting out of line and would be standing behind her.
Right.
Right.
I mean, this was like a 7-Eleven.
Right back to their business.
Yeah, it was insane.
Just starts mauling people with the thing.
Just starts waylaying people.
Brutal.
Yeah, and the weird thing about that is the baseline, the context, right? Had she been at a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a hardware store carrying an axe in her hand, maybe not so unusual. I would damn sure still be watching what she was doing with the axe, especially the way that she was carrying it, her body language. She was holding that thing like she was, full American Psycho, Patrick Bateman, about to just, talk to you about the latest Genesis album and then start tearing into your head with the thing, right? But yeah, I mean, it was insane. The fact that people completely disregarded her in an environment where carrying an axe was absolutely out of the norm. They'd be like walking into a hardware store with a chainsaw. Nobody would think twice about that. If you walk into a daycare with a chainsaw, people pretty much ought to assume that you're, a threat, and at the very least, be confronting you saying, "Hey buddy, where are you going with a chainsaw?" Hopefully with a weapon drawn. So, especially a daycare. I've just painted like my worst nightmare, a guy walking into a daycare with a chainsaw. That bothers me. Sorry, Mark. I know you. Yeah, I'm with you, man. Not happy thought. So, yeah. All right. When you create a baseline of an environment, Mark, how do you do that? So let's think about, you've used the example of restaurants nearby. Mm-hmm. And so, can I assume that maybe when you go to a restaurant nearby, small rural town, New Hampshire, it's probably mostly regulars in there, right? It's people that are in there often,
I mean, it's not that rural. I mean, we have like Dartmouth College, Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center.
Okay.
We have Thermodynamics, which is a huge, not Thermodynamics, Hypertherm, which is a huge plasma cutting company, one of the industry leaders for plasma cutters.
Okay.
And then we have like Timken Aerospace, which is a big, they have a bunch of contracts with the government and like ball bearings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of these type of companies that bring people from the outside. So frequently, just the college and the hospital alone take care of quite a bit of strangers, I would think.
Yeah. So you'll have people coming in and out that are not familiar.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's far from everybody knows your name type of thing, but it is still a small town.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how do you react when, you've created the baseline of an environment and you know that, this particular restaurant, casual, friendly, everybody's just enjoying themselves, maybe sitting at the bar, whatever. How do you react when that baseline is deviated from in some way, whether it's, it's something that happens or people that come in that you're not familiar with, or maybe it's just something completely abnormal. And maybe, I don't know, you had mentioned earlier that you kind of had some stories. So is this a good lead into that, or?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, my wife and I were sitting at a local place that we, really enjoy, and it's probably 60 to 70 seats in this restaurant. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of sitting middle, right smack in the middle. And as always, my back was not to the door, it was facing the door. And we were at kind of one of those tall boy type of tables. And the door opened up, guy walked in, and he was kind of like in like a cheap suit coat. And he had like a leather satchel underneath his arm, like his left arm, that had a strap. So it could have been on his shoulder, but he was like tucking it up underneath his arm, like kind of suspiciously. And I noticed it immediately. And then I noticed like the guy's sweating, like he's kind of out of his mind, kind of sweaty, kind of like jittery. I'm just like, what is going on here? And it wasn't quite enough at that point while he was standing at kind of like the hostess station for me to mention something or say something to Kristen just yet, but it definitely had caught my attention. Like the type of thing where she's talking, I'm paying zero attention to her and 100% to him. And I kind of follow him at that point. He walks without the hostess, not seated, and he's got like this brisk walk through this busy restaurant. He scoots right past us and goes over to like the back room, and he's like looking in the kitchen. And I'm like, what is going on? And this guy's getting even more and more antsy and a little bit more like frantic.
Oh yeah.
So strange. And I, at this point, we've already had the conversation. We were about to like peel out of there. It's starting to get like heartbeat. My heartbeat's coming up. Like something is going to go down here. This is getting very real. Very
yeah. A lot of your mental check boxes have already been checked at this point with this guy. Yeah.
This guy was on edge about something in a big way, and he wasn't there to be eating. Right. And it ended up being an error on some takeout food, and he was coming to get the replacement food or something, but he was like, I would think he was probably on something. Nothing ended up happening, but boy, oh boy, it totally spiked me up to that high threat level for sure.
Yeah.
And I remember like even Kristen was like, that guy is like, he's out there. Like right. Something's going on. Something's going to happen.
Well, and the positive thing is you guys trusted your gut, right? I mean, granted, nothing happened, but how many other people in the restaurant do you think were not even aware of what was going on?
I consciously looked around. It's like, is anybody else freaking out about this, or is this just me? And it was really just us. Like, wow. I didn't notice anybody else that had even noticed. And I'm at this, at the point that he was behind me and like staring into the kitchen, I'm doing like a complete 180, looking the opposite direction from my table and just staring like, what is happening right now? What is this guy about to do? Something is about to pop off here, and this isn't going to be good. And it was one of those things, because just my gut feeling, I was so sure, I was so sure something was going to happen, and right. It ended up not happening, but I'm glad that I was sure. And
right.
I'm glad that I noticed,
And, of course, that guy was no worse for the wear that you were that vigilant and that worried about him. He probably didn't even know that you were, but you being aware of that and having a plan in mind didn't cause any harm. And had you and Kristen actually gotten up and left, paid for your tab early, or even worse yet, ducked out without paying your tab, I'm sure you would have followed up with them later and said, hey, look, I had to, we had to go as an emergency. I'm settling up or something. Right. But, that's the worst that could have happened. Or the guy could have gone crazy and robbed the place, and that would have truly been the worst, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the thing about this stuff is it's really easy to practice.
Yeah.
Right. It's easy to practice, and it's also free to practice.
It is.
You just have to think about it. Just think about these situations, create them. You're in them every day. Think about what ifs.
Yeah.
How you're going to handle them if that what if does happen.
I think that some people might do this already automatically without even thinking about it, and it might be stressful to them. And I would put myself in that category. I was explaining to my wife the other day, we were out grocery shopping. I noticed several things that were actually kind of funny, and we talked about that before the show, and I'm not going to share it with the listeners because it was funny in a kind of a tacky way about some of the things that were going on in the grocery store. But in offering an explanation to my wife, and we've been married for 10 years, and she knows me, she knows the way that my mind works. I told her, I said, I can't turn this off, right? And I never have been able to. And my father-in-law pointed out, he said, this is probably because of some of the things you've been through in your life. And I get that. All the different stuff that we've been through in our lives adds up to our life experience. And then we kind of look at things through that lens. And so I get that. But it can be exhausting at times. And so if you're in the audience and you're listening to this and you're thinking, wow, that's me, I just didn't really ever think about it, or I've always kind of thought I was a little weird, or, my family members, they frown at that or scowl, hey, you're just being paranoid, you need to lighten up. Maybe share this with them and do some research on the topic of situational awareness. And you might be surprised at the fact you're already doing it. Mark, you're dead on right, though. This is something that you don't have to be born with. You can learn this, and you can cultivate it in a good way. It doesn't, we're not saying cultivate paranoia. We're saying cultivate awareness of what's going on around you. We've said this before. Other guests have said it. William even said it. The best fight is the one that you're not there for. It's the one that you avoid. If you practice awareness and avoidance, then you never have to draw your gun, hopefully. And life goes on, and you're blissfully unaware of the danger that you barely missed, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll mention a couple things that came out of one of these articles, and this is not my material. This is again on the Art of Manliness blog, and I'll link to it. They probably owe me a link back at this point, but anyway, they were talking about how to develop it, and they offered a couple of steps, and one of the steps was to just simply observe. And that's that condition yellow from Colonel Cooper's color codes. And that's just to be aware of what's going on around you and watch for things and formulate your baseline of whatever the event is. And that's kind of the game that they said, play is, figure out what the baseline is for the environment that you're in. And then the next thing that they said was try to put yourself in a position for optimal observation. Mark, you mentioned that a minute ago. It's the making sure that you're not sitting there with your back to the door, that you're able to watch what's going on around you. And then they said that another thing that you could do was to hone your observation skills by playing the A game or the awareness game. And this is funny. I'll tell you why this cracks me up. This past Sunday, my daughter, I promised her that I would take her to go get donuts. And so we got up early and we went and got donuts. And as we were coming back, she wanted to play the game I Spy. Right. And so, it's I spy something green and it's the grass or the trees or the whatever, or blue or white, it's the sky. But it's funny, they're talking about that exact game here. And it's just to kind of play that game with yourself or with, the people that are with you. And, you ask questions like, okay, well, so I spy, a person in a red shirt wearing, white New Balance tennis shoes. And, you look for the guy in the crowd that's doing that. And it's kind of interesting that doing that kind of stuff allows you to quickly identify things that are going on around you. But, that was pretty interesting, just how you can do that. And the other thing that they start going into, you really need to go, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes, but go and read this article. It's actually pretty solid. They talk about looking for behavior patterns, dominance and submissive patterns, comfortable and uncomfortable behaviors, like your guy in the restaurant that was sweaty and shifty and looking around and stuff. He was obviously uncomfortable. But this is all this stuff that plays into situational awareness, and it's a it's a free tactic, like you said. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to like reload it or go buy ammo for it or anything like that. And it's something that you can do rather benignly, and people don't even have to be aware that you're doing it. It's a fun way to pass time. If you get dragged by your significant other to the mall or to the store and you don't want to be there, you can at least do this and occupy your time playing the situational awareness game. So, yeah. Golly. I don't know. Where do I want to go with this next? Where do we want to go? We talked about profiling, and that's a legitimate tool. And we talked about some of the exercises and stuff. We're kind of narrowing in on the end of the hour, I guess. We're really kind of getting at this. We're almost at a 60-minute episode, which is interesting. We've not really done a 60-minute episode ever before. Now I feel like we need to push it a little bit further just so we can say that we still haven't. But I don't know. I mean, I just, the conversation that we had with William last week really had me thinking about situational awareness and how key that was to a lot of that discussion. Because really, once you get to the point that you've got to skin the holster or skin the gun from the holster, you've crossed a lot of bridges.
Yep.
And hopefully by that point you use situational awareness and you've positioned yourself to be, at least on equal footing, if not to have the upper hand. And if you didn't, maybe you're having to draw the holster in a very dire situation where you're behind the curve.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I really like the part that when we were talking that time, we were talking about, reading about the news and putting yourself in that situation and what you would have done, how you would have handled it, what you would have said, what you would have gone, which way would you have gone, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Like just going through the motions of thinking it out is making you better at it.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And it's free.
It's free and it doesn't take skill. It just takes the time and the wherewithal to actually do it, just to think about it, driving, thinking about it, so it's very, very simple just to keep your mind open that these things do happen and they literally could happen to you.
Yeah. You just mentioned driving, right? Situational awareness doesn't have to involve firearms or knives or anything else. It could also be driving. I drive a pretty good commute every day through, Nashville rush hour traffic coming and going. And I can't tell you how many times I see wrecks and I think to myself, wow, I'm glad that I wasn't just 5 seconds further up the road, or that would have been me that got hit. But I rarely think about what would I have done had I noticed that car coming towards me. And then that's situational awareness. You start wargaming it, and it's the same thing. And really situational awareness might keep you from getting hit by another car. If you notice a guy or a woman driving or not paying super attention to the road and they're more focused on their phone or the newspaper. I see that all the time. I don't know if you guys see that, but I see idiots driving down the road reading paperback books and stuff. And it's like, are you kidding me? You're driving.
Newspaper.
Yeah. So, the situational awareness thing can keep you from being in an accident because you notice what's going on and you decide, well, I'm going to lift my foot off the gas instead of keeping up with this guy because this guy looks like he's going to have a wreck here in a minute. So, yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. I actually was in that exact scenario
a year and a half ago. Were you reading the book?
Maybe.
Okay.
No, I actually was I was back on a weekend visiting my family in Iowa and was headed up on a pretty busy stretch of interstate highway. And it's not uncommon, there's construction and there's just frequently during rush hour, there's, people coming to a near stop and we're going along. I'm maintaining a safe following distance from the car in front of me. And all of a sudden I see brake lights lighting up ahead. And so I immediately, slam on my brakes and I see the car behind me coming on. And so I pulled over onto the shoulder and off almost into the ditch. Still had my passenger side tires. I was on the left side in the left lane. So I got off the road completely and the car behind me ended up smacking into the vehicle that was in front of me. And it was like, if I hadn't done that, I would have been sandwiched between the two vehicles,
Yeah. And had the person in front of you been aware, then they would have moved as well, potentially.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. Something that's interesting, this is just a weird aside, but especially with my, my job traveling that requires so much travel, I found the Waze app really helpful because there are many situations in which you'll be alerted to, something on the road, police, whatever, anything that could cause people to, like, a vehicle stopped on the shoulder.
Yep.
And you hear the alert, vehicle stopped on shoulder ahead in a quarter mile or
then
whatever.
You start looking.
And you start looking and braking, and then all of a sudden the people in front of you are slamming on their brakes, and you're like,
sure.
I was already prepared for that.
That's right.
Because I heard about it. That's what makes it so awesome, is like, hey, that information's out there, people are reporting it, and it can really save your skin by giving you, even an extra second of reaction time makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So
you're exactly right. Before we wrap up, I want to mention a book that I've started reading lately, and I'm finding it very interesting. It's a book called What Everybody, and those are two words, everybody. It's not like everybody. It's What Everybody is Saying, an ex-FBI agent's guide to speed reading people. And this was written by a former FBI agent named Joe Navarro, and I'll throw that in the show notes. But it's actually just talking about nonverbal intelligence and reading people's body language. And this looks like it would be helpful in a lot of different aspects of life. It'd be helpful in protecting yourself from dangerous situations. It would be helpful in dealing with people in business negotiations. Be helpful in dealing with your kids if you're not sure, are they telling me the truth? That kind of stuff. And they go through a lot of the nonverbal tells that people exhibit when they're starting to do certain things. Again, referring back to last week's episode, William Aprill mentioned the guy at the Miami ATM, that he sent that verbal or the nonverbal sign to his attacker that he was about to fight him by blading his body towards him and throwing the money down on the ground to kind of serve as a distraction. And he showed his hand to his detriment. Perhaps he showed his hand. So anyway, it looks like a good book, and I'm into it about a chapter so far, and it's just fascinating. So part of situational awareness is learning how to read people as well as the environment. Go ahead.
A question or two, if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
David.
go ahead.
I know we're trying to wrap up.
No. We want to actually not do an hour-long episode, so we're
okay.
Yeah,
perfect. So, as we were talking earlier, question I had for you guys, being in a little different stage of life. Not saying you're old and infirm yet.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard. It's the gray in the beard.
You've progressed further.
Yeah.
So a question I had for you guys, obviously I'm engaged, not married yet, no kids. And it's one thing to talk about the tools, but have you or how have you, if so, instilled just a desire or an impetus to be situationally aware, in your spouse or your children?
Yeah.
Is that something that you've had to work to, get them to make a priority in their own lives?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you. I was afraid you were gonna get me in trouble with your fiance, and I hadn't even met her yet. So I thought, well, that you're a great friend. Set me up for failure from the outset. But I don't know, Mark. You want me to go first? I'm trying to think through some of it. I got different perspectives because I also got adult kids now. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll go. I mean, so Chris and I have the conversations on a regular basis, and she is absolutely of the same mindset and page that I'm on.
Yeah.
I mean, she trains with her handgun. She gets kind of geeked out about this stuff. She is very cautious of people in general.
Yeah.
Right. So with my daughter, she's 11. She is naturally kind of cautious of people, and maybe it's shyness, but it takes her a little bit to come out of her comfort zone. And I think we've talked about this maybe in some early episodes of something that I will sometimes do is I'll be listening to like NPR in the truck or an audiobook, and I'll do it on purpose. And I can see her kind of like scanning through the situation, thinking about what's happening. And then it almost always triggers the questions. And it's the questions I wanted her to ask.
Right.
And that way we could get the dialogue going without me just like being preachy. And it's why would this person do that? What was this person thinking? Why did this happen to that person? Like, oh my gosh, do you think they're going to be okay? Like, did they find the missing girl? You know what I mean? Like all of these things, which allows me to talk about real world situations with her. And you can see like the innocence almost like just completely baffled by the fact that this type of evil exists.
Yeah.
And she's retaining it. You know what I mean? She's retaining it by hearing it in a real world application, such as hearing it on the news, then asking questions. And that's what we've done. I think it works pretty well. I think it's kept her understanding that not everybody is your friend, and not everybody is going to always be so kind, and that you're used to in your life here in rural New Hampshire with everybody, and everybody she knows loves her. You know what I mean? Like, right. So, and I think at 11 years old, I think I probably started this at probably 9, definitely more frequently at 10. And now it's maybe a weekly thing that I will do is just toss something on that I know will elicit a question or two. And that's what I do with her. With Kristen, I really don't need to because she's already there. And Sawyer, he's 6 months old. He's advancing quick, but we're not ready for that talk yet.
Yeah. First of all, my hat's off to you because you do the thing that I don't do, and I know that I should, right? And that's you allow the person to arrive at the question on their own. And I'll be very honest and transparent about the fact that often I have the subtlety of a clawhammer root canal when it comes to that kind of stuff, right? My 2 older kids would probably agree to that completely. And my son, I think my directness with some of my questions has maybe pushed him away from seeing and embracing some of the same things that I have. And my middle, well, she would have been my middle, but my next oldest, my daughter, she's probably more similarly minded to me in those things. And we've not really spoken about it in any great detail. I don't think that she's had bad things happen to her. Knocking on wood, I hope that that's the case. I just think she's kind of watched and observed and is just naturally wired that way, similar to me. And I can tell you that if she is, it's going to be very fatiguing to her. And I hope that she learns how to tone it down occasionally and learn how to relax. My 2 younger kids, I don't know. They're so young now that I don't know what their personality is going to be like. The next to youngest is 4, and she is happy, carefree, and loves everybody. I think my challenge with her in life will be to get her to be skeptical of people, and at the same time, yet I hope that she doesn't lose that innocence and that desire to love people. The youngest, my son, I don't know. I mean, I think he's going to be more like me. He's very analytical. I can see it. He doesn't, even at almost a year of age, he's always trying to figure things out. And I think that he's going to be the watcher and the learner and the person that monitors and that kind of stuff. My wife, Sandy, she, I think that when we met, it was definitely a case of meeting the right person at the right time, because neither one of us really were looking for a long-term relationship or anything like that. And I think at best we thought, oh, this is somebody that would be fun to hang out with. And then, obviously we ended up enjoying each other enough or enjoyed tormenting each other enough that we decided to get married. That whole belief, Jordan, that marriage is a long-term exercise in trolling somebody. We both do that very, very, very well. We troll each other. So it's fun. But, she had personal experiences that I think led her to feel like, I think she even talked about this on the women's episode that they did. I think it's like episode 18 off the top of my head. I'm trying to think of that. But anyway, she was ready to get a handgun of her own and get a carry permit. She just wasn't sure how to navigate that. And I think she wanted it because of, again, bad situations with a ex-husband and stuff that she just really kind of wanted to be able to protect herself. With me, I don't know, man. I'm messed up. from very early on. I've been through enough weird stuff in my life that I'm just naturally skeptical of people, and she tolerates it. So, did that even begin to answer your question, or was this a confessional?
No. I mean, that's all good. It's just something that I was especially conscious of on Sunday because, again, I was, following two people that are very close to me, and both of them seem fairly oblivious, or at least in comparison to me, just like you mentioned with the Jason Bourne, noticing that you're noticing things that other people aren't.
Right. Yeah.
And that just, it's like, okay, it's one thing for me to be alert, but I can't see 360 24/7,
Yeah.
I can't be aware all the time. Just like Mark mentioned, when you're out with a bunch of guys and you know that, you've got 4 or 5 buddies that are also carrying, there's somewhat of a sense of security because you know that they're also intentional about providing for their own security, about the security of the group, and just assessing what's going on around. In the same way, even for people that aren't necessarily prepared to defend themselves to the same extent, that's something I'd like to instill in my friends is, hey, let's be aware of what's going on around us. Doesn't mean we have to be paranoid walking around scanning and checking our shoulders every second.
Yeah.
But yeah. And as we've talked about this tonight, something that I thought maybe another good way to frame situational awareness is having the ability, I think that's why I said purposefully, scanning, having the ability to disregard distractions.
Yeah.
That comes into play when you're driving, when you're walking down a busy street, whatever. Right. It's very easy to be distracted and look at the same, it's like a magician, right? You don't ever want to follow the hands, where he's using misdirection.
Right.
And if you're just looking at what everyone else is looking at, you're not going to notice, you're not going to be prepared for the threat. You're not going to know what's actually happening behind the scenes, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's just something that I'd like to try to instill in my friends without saying, hey, you should be paranoid. But, I don't know. It's kind of a personal challenge, I think, for myself, that in the future, when I'm out with buddies, it's, hey, did you notice that guy? What do you think about that person over there? Anything seem off to you? What's going on here? In this restaurant or whatever.
Without going too far down a tangent this late in the episode, and maybe we do this again soon, right? But I think that the things that you just said hit me several different ways. First one is, in some ways, I'm very jealous of the people that can go through life kind of oblivious and unaware, because it's like insurance for your car or health insurance or whatever else. Generally, you're not going to need it, right? I mean, that's why the insurance industry is so profitable, because statistically you won't need it, and so you're paying into something every month that you're building up a cash cow. It's profitable, right? It's not just meeting the need. It's profitable for the people that are backing up the business. So obviously you're paying more money into it than you'll ever statistically need to draw back out of it, right? So the world is a pretty scary place at times, but it's probably not as bad as sometimes we make it out to be in our heads. And the people that just kind of float through life, que sera, sera, I'm very jealous of that, because I can't do that. And it seems like that would be a gift. It would be very relaxing. But on the other hand, when the stuff hits the fan, it's also a weakness. It's a detriment, because those people generally are completely unprepared. And that's why people like you and Mark and I, it's good that we are aware. There's a purpose for that. The second thing I was thinking about was the fact that I'm only speaking for myself here. I tend to gravitate towards other people that are like me, and the folks that aren't like that, I'll be honest, we just don't hang out. We don't hang around them very often. And part of the reason why we like the church that we go to is because they have a very good safety program, and I know that I can go there and can actually relax and listen to the message on Sunday without fear of somebody kicking in the door with an AK-47 and shooting up the place. Because if they do that, they've somehow managed to make it past all the other people that are there that are commissioned to do safety and security before they could ever get to me. And by that point, they've made enough noise that I've got some time to react, right? So, and it's bizarre to even think about that in the current climate, that you have to think, or I have to think, I want a church that has good security, that's armed and can actually deal with a problem. And, that way I can go in there and actually focus on the thing that I'm supposed to focus on, right? And the same thing I think would go for a school. I'd want my kids to go to a school where there's an armed security presence, so that, if something bad were to happen, that, people are there to deal with it. So anyway, tangent. I don't know, Mark, you look like you had a thought. You're kind of leaning in there. What were you thinking?
No, I just feel like we can continue to go down this type of conversation, when it comes to mindset, because the mind is, ever ending. We can consistently talk about this, and I just can't stress enough, just keep continuing to putting yourself in these situations and thinking how you would handle it.
Right.
And one of the best things that you're doing, or a great thing that you're doing probably, is doing what you're doing right now and listening to the show. You know what I mean? That tells me that you are already putting one foot in front of the other, and it's important to you.
Yeah.
You're not listening to us goofballs talk about this stuff unless you think that, unless your head's screwed on the right way. You know what I mean? You're thinking about it in the way that you should be thinking about it, and that's what counts. And yeah.
No, that's a very good point. That's I can think of no more perfect place to end the episode tonight than that. Honestly, it's hard to look for a stopping point in a place where, it's just three guys sitting around talking about a subject. We could talk about this all night long. But what you said is very appropriate. It's that if you're listening to this, you're taking a step in the right direction. And I would add to that, you're not weird. The fact that you notice things and notice people and notice behavior, and you're already forming baselines, maybe before you even knew that the word baseline was a thing. You're not weird. You're not strange. You're following your body's natural, our evolutionary potential to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves by avoiding bad stuff, and keep at it. Right. And if your family and friends think you're weird, maybe share this episode with them. Yeah. At least then they think that there's three other weird guys out there. So anyway, this was fun. I'm glad that we did this tonight. I was afraid initially that there wasn't gonna be a whole lot to talk about, but now that I sit here this far into it, I realize that we could really talk about this for hours, and it might be just reinforcing the same things over and over, but yeah, I'm glad that we did this, and I hope that it helps somebody in the audience. If it helps one person, awesome. If not, we had fun. So,
maybe next episode.
Right. Keep coming back.
Which is going to be awesome, by the way.
Next episode's going to be great. Yeah, so let's talk about that. First of all, Jordan, thanks for joining us tonight, man. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you. Glad you made it through Chiraq without any bad things happening to you. So obviously the Windy City is not all terrible, right? So
not entirely good food. That's for sure.
Yeah. So wait, pizza. Did you do it? Did you do Chicago style pizza?
I'm on a diet that doesn't really allow for that right now, but I did steal some sausage and cheese off the pizza that my fiance and my friend had. So it wasn't entirally lost. I got to enjoy the best parts.
Well, I know it can be very religious up there. There's Uno, and then I'm trying to think of what the other one is. So I'm terrible.
Illuminati's.
Yeah, right. So yeah. Anyway, all right, that's fine. I've got a guy that I work with that's from Chicago, and I'll just go pick his brain on this because he's not on your diet.
Absolutely.
Whatever.
I was going to say the one thing, the last closing thought or my big takeaway is something that Mark said early on and just came to mind when you're talking about, insurance, you're paying into a system.
Yeah.
Everything we've talked about, developing this mindset and these skills doesn't cost you a thing.
That's right.
And the more you invest, whether you ever are in a situation where there's an active threat or not, it doesn't cost you a thing to prepare yourself for it. So I appreciate what you guys said. That was
Well, thank you.
Really struck home, and appreciated being on. Thanks for the chance.
You may be the one person that got something out of it. So there you go. I'm good with it. High five, Mark. We did Jordan some good. So, all right. So coming up soon, we've got the 6-month anniversary show, and there's a lot to try to work out and figure out how to make that happen, especially if we're going to try to do a live thing. Our audience members might have already noticed that we've lit up our YouTube channel again, and really at this point we're just streaming our audio podcasts out to it. Every time we release one, it posts to YouTube. But we've picked up some subscribers on YouTube, and that's fun. So I'm feeling like it. I'm feeling like we might do a video thing. I'll have to go sit out in the sun or something to make Jordan feel better about how pasty white I am in this harsh lighting in my office. But anyway, so that's coming up. And then as you alluded to, and I'm not entirely sure which order it might be, if it'll be before or after the 6-month show that we do, but we do have a special guest coming up. You want to introduce, or you want to give the audience a teaser there?
Yes, we will have Tatiana Wetlock on the show.
Awesome.
We'll be recording next week. I think, what do we say, Thursday?
Yeah, we're going to record Thursday night. That's going to be awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
I am super psyched.
She gave us a bunch of great bullet points to get our questions ready for. And,
awesome.
And if you're not in the know with who she is, definitely worth a Google.
Yeah.
Really, really great in the firearms training community. She's a New Englander up here by me. She's up near Portland, Maine. Super nice lady. Very, very, very well respected in the industry, and really look forward to having her on for all of you guys. I've listened to her on lots of different podcasts. I've chatted with her in person a few times. It's going to be a great show for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's neat. She actually knows our friend Tiffany Johnson. She and Tiffany were on an episode of, I think it's like the Bill Frady podcast. Maybe I'm getting his name wrong, but there's
Lock
so
and
many.
Load.
Yeah, Lock and Load. There's so many of those out there that I'm terrible at keeping names. I'm terrible at names even at work. I'm like, hey guy, how you doing? Right, and it's like I've met you a million times. But anyway, so. I mean, they did really fantastic on that. And they kind of built Tiffany built on a lot of the conversation that she had with Kristen and Sandy on our episode for the ladies. And it was fantastic to hear a continued evolution of that. And so her and Tatiana did a fantastic job. And it's neat, right? I've seen a lot of the pictures that Tatiana's done, especially in advertising materials and things like that. And you look at her and think, wow, super intense, got to be action packed. And then you hear her talk, and she's like the nicest, sweetest person on the planet. And so, yeah, it was really cool to I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, she's one of the agents for Agency Arms.
Yeah.
For Nighthawk Customs, I think. For Aimpoint, she's one of Aimpoint's sponsored shooters.
Yeah.
So she's definitely put her time in the industry. Very strong female in the industry, and she's just so nice all the time. Every time I've spoken to her or talked to her, she's overwhelmingly nice. Yeah. And she also is the resident trainer at Howell's Gun Shop up in Gray, Maine.
Okay.
A place that I've been to a couple times now. I just went up a couple weeks ago for some work stuff. And if you're a Maine or a New Hampshire person, it's just a touch above Portland. It's a fantastic little shop.
Worth the drive. Right?
Yeah, 12. I think it's 12 or 16 bay action target range, indoor range, awesome. 25 yard. I did a carbine course up there with Steve Fisher, a weekend course last year.
Okay.
It's a great range, great place to go train. So definitely check out Howell's too. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to having her on. It's gonna be a privilege to speak with her and really just hear. I think her message. It looks like it's shaping up to be about the new. I'm going to call it the new breed, but like the new generation of very strong female authority figures in the Second Amendment circle, if you will, and it's these women that are emerging as front runners to carry the banner and push us further and further the cause, and that is freaking tastic. So I'm excited about it. I know that my wife's excited to hear the interview too. So it'll be fun. Very cool.
And then she also, I would say, is extremely proficient on the family security aspect.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Family security, in-home security, in-home house clearing, all that kind of stuff. I know that that's like right in her wheelhouse. So
maybe we'll carve out some time to talk about that with her. That'd be fun.
Absolutely. I think it would be a great, I mean, she mentioned quite a few good bullets in our conversation that we could talk about, and all of them seem great. So it's going to be hard to just pick a couple, because knowing us, we're going to get on one topic and it's going to be 45 minutes, and we'll get on the second topic and the show's over.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to be funny is because, the audience doesn't know this, but the conferencing system that we use as we're recording the podcast episodes allow us to see each other on video. You're going to fire up the video next week, and I'm not going to be here. You're going to see my wife. She's going to be sitting here, and like I'll be unconscious in a corner somewhere where she's knocked me the heck out so that she could do the show. So I guarantee it. It's going to be fun. Well, I'm looking forward to that. So again, the 6-month anniversary is coming up, most likely after the episode with Miss Whitlock, but anyway, in conjunction with that, be watching this next week after you listen to this. So you guys will be listening to this episode on Sunday, what is the calendar date? The 19th, and the week of the 19th moving forward. That week, follow us on Instagram. I'm going to start doing some stuff where if you share us out and tag your friends, can be giving away some hats and so forth. And then Mark, we'll get together and talk about some other stuff in there too. But that's coming up. Special thanks to our patrons who are directly supporting the show. If that's you, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. If you want to support the show, you don't have to, but we would really love it if you did. You can go to shootersnation.com and look for the donate button. Also, while you're there, just head over to shootersnation.com's store and you can pick up some logoed merchandise. If you don't win a hat in the Instagram giveaways and you want a hat, you can actually go buy a hat at shootersnation.com. While you're there, look for the idea link, and that's the cute little kitten raising his hand saying, I've got an idea. Click on the kitten, pet the kitten. You can tell us what you want to hear on the show in the weeks ahead. We really do want to know. It's interesting. So far, a lot of the things that people have asked us for, we've had in minds anyway, but we still want the ideas, right? Mark's over there just completely dying. What's going on, Mark? I'll talk to you about this after the show. We'll roll the credits and then you can ruin it for me. This is fantastic. Sometimes I really do wish that we had YouTube. This is great. It's the outtake reel. All right, now you're in it for me. I'm gonna start laughing. All right, cool. It's probably is it too late to? Never mind. I was gonna make the joke. I was gonna work the key the word for the episode in, but I'm not gonna do it. I could completely replace the I have an idea link with the Wiener Pit meme.
That's what I'm laughing.
That's the one you're laughing about. That's it. See, I figured I could bring it in. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're just proof that we're like fully grown adult males, but we're 12 years old trapped in male bodies. The Wiener Pit meme. I'll link to the Wiener Pit meme in the show notes. Why not? We can have other people laughing too. Jordan's over there laughing. I'm the only guy. My mic's the only one that's open, and I'm over here left to struggle through now the Wiener Pit.
I feel like this could lead, like we've opened Pandora's box now, considering all the other memes that we shared with each other during the break.
Yeah. We're terrible people behind the mics, folks. Really, we are. All right. I'll put the Wiener Pit meme in the show notes. Now I have to. It's a thing. It's going to be there, and it's not my fault.
That poor dog has been seen all over the country.
It really has. Where was I even at in the closing comments? I don't even know. And I said like 30 minutes ago we were going to close. I completely put.
You were at the cat, and that's what got me laughing. I thought about replacing the cat with the dog.
With the Wiener Pit dog. Oh my God! It's a wiener dog body with a pit bull head on it, and the joke builds off of that. I don't even know if I don't even know if I want to close the episode now. I think I should just roll credits and be done with it.
Yep.
Oh my God. All right.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening. No. So connect with us at shootersnation.com and be sure to sign up for the Mail Blast mailing list while you're there. We send out memes. No, we don't. We really don't do that. I could start sending out memes, but we also send out legit announcements about upcoming shows, live events, special promotions, etc. Mark, where do people connect with you after the show? Wienerpit.com.
Well, first of all, not only, you can connect with me at info@squaredawaycustoms.com, or if you need any Kydex or Polymer 80 gear at squaredawaycustoms.com. using coupon code Shooters Nation. But I definitely wanted to toss in. I mean, I thank everybody on a regular basis, but man, Squared Away Customs is seeing lots of Shooters Nation notes and mention on orders, and they're throwing it in the comments like, good to hear you on the show, that type of stuff. So we really, really appreciate the business. It's fantastic, and we're super happy to be on the show. A couple hours a week. It's a good break for me, and it's really great to be on and just be able to chat for you guys. And I really appreciate seeing your comments and the orders coming in.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here. So that's awesome. I'm glad the members are too. Jordan, how do people connect with you after the show, and how do they get terrible memes sent from you to their inbox on Facebook?
Yeah, so since no one will be able to spell my last name, you can just find me in the Shooters Nation Facebook page, Jordan Linscheid. Yeah. Should be pretty self-evident. And yeah, if you want to sign up for a daily dose of horrific memes that may or may not get you banned from Facebook for sharing them.
Oh God.
I'm your source. So
this really, I mean, we made it like, I'm looking at the recorder. We're on the recorder. Now I know this isn't like indicative of the time of the episode, but like 2 hours and 12 minutes. We did really well, guys. We got 2 hours and 12 minutes on tape before it completely went off the skids. So I feel like at this point, I really should change the album art for this episode to the Wiener Pit meme. Oh my God.
Let's keep this train on the tracks here. We got to get more people on the group, in the Facebook group.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Listeners, you may not notice that or may not know it, but we have a group on Facebook. If you go to Shooters Nation, facebook.com/Shooters Nation, there is a group that you can join and you can interact with us, and Jordan can share memes there.
Yep.
Until Facebook Zucker bans him, and then you're in Zucker jail. I don't even know where to end. I feel like I'm ending on a low note, but maybe it's a high note. I don't even care anymore. I needed this show tonight, so this was good. All right, everybody, be situationally aware. Be aware of memes, especially the terrible Wiener Pit memes. I have to face people at church that listen to this episode, and now I'm going to have to explain this one. And now Jordan's laughing even harder. All right, everybody. All right, everybody. Hope you have a good week. Hope you have as much fun as we did. We will talk to you again next week. Take care. Be safe.
The preceding segment was a production of the Shooters Nation podcast. Visit us online at shootersnation.com.